Hello and welcome. My name is Penny Rosema, and you're listening to the Cookware Manufacturers Association podcast. We thank you for joining us. And this morning we're talking with Hugh Rushing. He's a former executive vice president of CMA, and we're going to have a little history lesson today. Give our listeners information about cookware and bakeware in general, and then about some of the great things that have happened over the years with the Cookware Manufacturers Association. So welcome, Hugh. I appreciate you joining us on the call.
Thank you, Penny. It's good to be with you.
What I thought we'd start with, Hugh, is, just tell us a little bit about how you even became involved with CMA. What's your history?
Well, my history really comes out of the manufacturing business for 14 years before I joined the CMA. I was in the manufacturing business. We manufactured cookware along with a lot of other consumer products, but I had a background in manufacturing. And when I got involved in management, I urged the company I was working for to join the CMA in the late 1980s, and we very quickly became involved. I served a term on the board. I also worked with the Engineering Standards Committee as well. And in early 1991, my predecessor approached me on behalf of the board and asked if I would be interested in perhaps joining in the association. We entered into discussions there, and the board offered me the position in the fall of 1991, and I actually joined January the 1st, 1992. So my background is in manufacturing, and something I've always enjoyed and liked. And have been, my mother used to tell the story that when I was very small, one of my favorite programs was a National Association of Manufacturers program that ran on Saturday mornings called Industry on Parade. And it would have all this machinery and steel forging and stuff. And I was apparently just fascinated by that. So
you had a calling very early then, and you found that you're the right journey. We've talked various times, Hugh, about how the association has evolved since it started in 1922. But, could you do a little recap about how it evolved to what it is today?
Sure. Well, it's very interesting. Germany, started World War I, and World War I was the war to end all wars. And most people don't realize it, but Germany had an extensive war machine industry, and in particularly blimps. They used blimps to bomb London. People think of London being bombed in World War II, but it was first bombed by Zeppelins in World War I. And part of the Treaty of Versailles made Germany get out of the Zeppelin business, as well as the aircraft business and the battleship business. And so they converted, most of the Zeppelins had aluminum frames that contained the gas bags. And so all of a sudden, these folks in Germany decided to produce cookware, and they exported it to the United States. They desperately needed solid currency because of the rampant inflation of the Weimar Republic. And so this aluminum shows up in the United States, and most people would be surprised to know that Germans could produce low quality, but apparently it was a very low quality, very cheaply made. It was one step above aluminum foil, and the existing manufacturers in the United States were extremely concerned about this. They thought it was muddying the marketplace. It was certainly providing competition for them, low priced and low quality competition. And so a move was set in place to form an association and then lobby Congress to pass a punitive tariff on these cheap wares. And so that's the real opening of the association's work. And that was strictly from the aluminum manufacturers' standpoint. Those firms were mostly centered in Ohio, in Western Pennsylvania, and in Illinois, as well as Wisconsin. And it didn't hurt that the Secretary of Treasury, who pushed for this tariff, happened to be in the same family that owned massive amounts of Aluminum Corporation of America. So we really started out as a protection association to try to protect American consumers and try to protect American manufacturers from cheap imports. So the Aluminum Wares Association rocked along for a number of years. Changes came along, and It eventually coalesced to become the Metal Cookware Manufacturers, and then in the early 1970s, the Cookware Manufacturers Association, embracing all the producers of all different types of cookware, even if it was the type of cookware that wasn't metal and that would go into a microwave oven.
Long history from the aluminum wares, metal wares, and then to this CMA. It's interesting that the association was originally born out of an economic and tariff-related challenges. That's very
interesting. The more the world changes, the more it cycles around again, it seems.
Yes, that's very true. So, Hugh, what do you believe were some of the key factors that have helped CMA evolve? I mean, that's a long history. What are we, like 97 years now that we've been relevant? What is your opinion on how it lasted?
I think the biggest thing really is the industry's willingness to adjust to change and realize that change is part of the dynamic manufacturing and marketing environment, and being willing to make adjustments. One of the biggest things that happened in the notes of the association and their minutes in 1941, their fall membership meeting was held in Alcoa, Tennessee, where they were taken out and shown these vast stores of aluminum, and the Aluminum Corporation of America, who owned the little resort in Alcoa, Tennessee, and used the power produced by TVA to smelt the aluminum, assured the association that World War II come or not, there would be so much aluminum, there would never be any interruption of supply. And then, of course, December the 7th, 1941, Pearl Harbor was bombed. And immediately, those manufacturers that previously had been making skillets and saucepans and stock pots were making messed kits and other aluminum aircraft parts, and went into war production. And obviously, all of that aluminum was taken away from the industry so far as making cookware was concerned. But after World War II, there was also the introduction of a lot of sort of new materials. Stainless steel had been extremely rare prior to World War II. But during World War II, stainless steel was developed in a number of different armaments and things, and it became more common, and people started dabbling in making stainless steel cookware. So that was a big change that came along in the late 40s and early 1950s. And around 1960, probably the biggest change was the astonishing introduction of PTFE, otherwise known as nonstick cookware. And the product introduced by the DuPont Corporation, they were the single manufacturer at the time. And that really changed the industry. That made cookware something that it hadn't been before, which was a product that conceivably could be replaced more than just once in a lifetime. People used to get cookware for their wedding, and when they were laid away and died 40 years later, they were still using the same pan. Nonstick cookware has a life cycle, and frankly, it was a real boon to the industry that people would periodically replace that as the nonstick would become less non-sticky. And then the other big change, which required adjustment for the industry, was the introduction of the microwave appliance in the kitchen. Microwaves, ovens had been around as early as the early 1960s, but they were incredibly expensive, several thousands of dollars. They were huge. They were half the size of a refrigerator. But by the 1970s, particularly the mid-70s, microwaves had been shrunk in both size and price, and they became extremely popular. The cookware industry was very nervous about this, thinking that everyone was going to be cooking in a microwave oven pretty soon. So there was a lot of scurrying around and worry about that. Of course, it turned out that microwave, the most common use is to pop popcorn into eat leftovers. But it did require adaptation, and that's when the association opened its membership to people that were not in the metal cookware manufacturer, but were in the type non-metal cookware, which would be used in the microwave oven. So again, just those highlights that really changed the cookware and the bakeware industry and propel the association to make the changes it made from time to time.
Do you remember your first microwave? When you were talking about that, I remembered that when our family had the first microwave, and we used it to warm up our hoagies, the little submarine sandwiches with cheese and ham on them.
What I remember was the only thing I ever won in a drawing in my life was a microwave oven.
Wow.
1974, I think it was.
That would have been a big deal.
I was very excited. I brought it home, put it on the counter, and the next morning I thought, this has got to be the perfect appliance to make a hard-boiled egg. So I popped the egg in the microwave and set it on 3 minutes, and was loading some stuff in my briefcase across the kitchen when the egg exploded. And it took me most of the afternoon of the next day, which was a Saturday, to clean the blown up egg out of the little holes in the cavity. So that was my introduction to microwave.
You definitely remember your first microwave for sure.
Very much a memory, yes.
Hugh, since I've been on board, I've been extremely impressed with Cookware Association and our engineering standards subcommittees and how hard they work. But could you talk a little bit about the history of the cookware and bakeware engineering standards and why they have remained so relevant in their importance?
Sure. Well, in the early or late 1920s and early 1930s, from the association's records, everyone had a different idea about what the size of a product should be. Should a skillet be 8 inches in diameter, 9 inches in diameter, 10 and a half? What would it be? How big would a baking pan be? All different sizes and types existed, all different gauges of material. I mentioned the German imports that were just one step above aluminum foil in thickness. And so the association decided one of the things it should do would be to sponsor and promote and promulgate certain basic standards. So a certain thickness would be, a minimum thickness would be not required, but suggested. Certain sizes would be suggested where it would make sense, a 4-quart, maybe a 6-quart stew pan, or a saucepan, 1-quart, 2-quart, 3-quart. So the association came together and formed an engineering standards committee, and that was basically what they searched for: common ground and common sizes, so consumers wouldn't be as confused, and they could make intelligent decisions. They could compare a baking pan from company A to company B without having to worry about fractions of an inch or how much it cost per square inch. That was the initial thrust of the engineering standards. It also worked closely with shippers in order to standardize packaging. Obviously, for retailers, some people sold by the single piece, other people wanted to sell a half dozen or a dozen, and there were certain of those standards that were just suggested as well. But all of those engineering standards, Penny, were voluntary. No one was required to do it if it wasn't in their best interest. But most people thought it was in their best interest too, because they were very rationally thought out, and they were arrived at really in a very collaborative manner with the association. The government doesn't let you collaborate on pricing or markets, but they certainly will allow you to collaborate on safety and on uniformity in an industry. The electrical industry does it. The plumbing industry does it. We all know the words UL for electrical appliances. Again, nonprofit associations of interested manufacturers are able to get together and work together to bring an order to the market that benefits the consumer.
Now, on that subject a little bit too, when you're talking about, consistency and the safety and uniformity, these standards are also valuable to the retailer, that retail buyer who's new into the industry, or, just trying to compare or understand that commodity. Have you seen the buyers use this information as well, or reference?
Absolutely. Obviously, the existing standards are rather technical in nature, but the association also produces really a buyer's guide, which hopes to educate the buyer if they are new to the industry and new to the buying this particular product. Really give them. It starts with the different methods of cooking, It moves through the different sizes and how it's rationally put together and ends up with a rather complete compendium of different sizes and shapes and the different volumes and sizes that are offered. So I think retailers also take advantage of this. That retailer's guide or buyer's guide to cookware and bakeware is drawn very heavily from the engineering standards.
Hey, that's a good point. And for our listeners, that buyer's guide is available on cookware.org. At the top of the page, we have a link that's for retailers, and they'll find that cookware bakeware guide there. So thank you very much for reminding me about that. And the fact that that's all tied together with and the importance of the cookware and bakeware engineering standards. Any other closing words of advice or any history a question that we didn't ask that was, kind of relevant and fun? Oh, I know one thing I was almost forgot to mention was, in looking through some of the engineering or the files here and stories, I found an article that in our archives, and it started with this quote. It started with a phone call, the voice filled with amazement. Do you mean to tell me there's no government regulation for cookware? And your response was, that's right, and for good reason. Do you remember that call, and were there others like that?
Well, I remember that call particularly because I had been tasked to write an article for one of the trades press about engineering standards in the cookware industry, in the bakeware industry, and I was sort of had writer's block. I was a little stuck. The phone rang, and it actually reminded me, I'd had these phone calls before, but it was a person seeking to enter the cookware business, and they were obviously gathering intelligence and information. So they called the CMA offices, and they said, "Well, what do I have to do to get approval to sell cookware?" And I said, "Well, you don't have to do anything except convince a buyer and a retailer to buy your product." "Well, do you mean there's no government regulation?" I said, "Not specifically." I said, "The Food and Drug Administration will move against anybody that is producing something that would be harmful that comes into contact with food. But I said, in general, the government looks to industry to be responsible in the United States and to do what's best for consumers." And so it's interesting. There are many countries in many parts of this world where people think the solution to any problem is to have a government regulation passed. The United States, for the most part, has taken the position that industry can govern itself. Nobody in his right mind would produce a product that would be harmful. Of course, occasionally, accidents happen and manufacturing mistakes can happen, but nobody's intentionally setting out to harm the consumer. For many countries, regulations mean a method of control. It can stifle competition. It can restrict innovation. It can provide fewer choices for the consumer. And I think the association has always believed that our voluntary engineering standards, which, by the way, some countries have actually borrowed from rather liberally to enact their own required regulations. But in any event, the CMA has done a good job, and the industry has done a great job of policing itself. And I think we do have in the United States the largest, most diverse selection of cookware at the most reasonable prices of any place in the world.
That I totally agree with all that. And what I heard out of what you were saying there, as well as how agile we are as an industry. Yes, the standards are voluntary, but I'm working with the engineering standards subcommittee right now with a nice cross-functional group of engineers from, all of the membership. And it's amazing how caring they are and how detailed they are and how meticulous they are about getting things right when we make any updates or clarifications with the standards as they are. So they're just an excellent group of engineers to work with. It's been really fun and challenging sometimes too, but very, very dedicated group of people. Anything else you can think of that we didn't cover, Hugh?
I think that's pretty much it.
It's been a delight talking with you. I always enjoy these conversations and talking about the history, and we've had conversations on more than one time, and it's just fascinating to see how this industry has evolved. And I'm very proud to be part of the Cookware Manufacturers Association and what we continue to do. If there are listeners that would like more information, if you're a cookware or bakeware manufacturer, we invite you, or supplier, we invite you to explore our website, We've got a wealth of information there that's free and available. Of course, the great insights come with membership, and then you get a login to some additional information. The cookware and bakeware engineering standards are available online for purchase. They're free to our CMA members, but they can be purchased by anyone on cookware.org. Of course, you could reach out and contact me. I'm Penny Rosema, the managing director. My email address is on the website as well, and my phone number if you have questions or just would like to have a further conversation about what our association is about. We invite you to give us a call. And thank you again, Hugh, for the opportunity and taking time to share your experience and your wealth of information.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.